After the 2011 season, that was a complete and total disaster for the Indianapolis Colts on so many different levels. The organization was in a real state of flux and was really, up in the air in terms of its future status. And you had a lot of people that were freaking out because Peyton Manning, the longtime savior of the franchise, was going to be shown the door. And what exactly is going to happen? Well, I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. The Colts really haven't skipped a beat. And frankly, both short term and I think especially long term, they're better off for Peyton Manning having left town. Because that 2011 season, did one thing for the Colts. When you suck, you want to suck all the way. Because when you have the chance to get that franchise guy like an Andrew Luck, and you're able to get him, it can change your franchise instantly just like that. And that's what's happened for the Indianapolis Colts. You're talking about a team that's made the playoffs 3 straight years. And each year along the way, they've went a step farther in the process in the playoffs. Like you look at 2014, they were able to go 11-5, won their division, which isn't saying much, but you win the division, you get into the playoffs, you get a home playoff game. They found a way to handle business against a depleted Cincinnati Bengals team. Then they went on the road to Denver, and they handled and owned Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. Just like I've been telling you for a long time was going to fucking happen. Then, of course, they get to the AFC Championship game, and they got completely owned and dismantled and dismembered by the New England Patriots. But again, it's about steps in the road. It's about progress. And while they haven't been able to get over that hump that is the New England Patriots, especially in the playoffs the past 2 years, you got to feel good about the Indianapolis Colts and their chances in 2015 because every year they've gotten another step closer. Every year they've grown. Every year they've progressed. And that's a good thing. And big reason for that is because of the recent success under Ryan Grigson in the NFL draft. You look at the very end of Bill Polian's term for all the great things he did as a front office guy going back to his days with the Bills and then here again with the Colts. The end of his reign really wasn't all that good. I mean, you look back, he had some really bad misses. And even 2011, while Costanzo has ended up working out okay at left tackle, he's been kind of a hit. The rest of that 2011 class, that last of Bill Polian's, was a pretty big miss. It was a pretty big swing and a miss. But man, oh man, I tell you what, when you hit on that young franchise quarterback that you take in the first round, it makes up for a lot of previous ills and a lot of previous mistakes. And, it gives you an identity, it gives you a philosophy, and it guides you on your approach to what you want to do in the NFL draft. And that's what's happened with the Colts the past few years. You look at 2012, so I said it back at that time, that was a really good draft class that the Colts were really going to benefit for a long period of time to come. You get Luck in the first round. You get Fleener and Allen, a pair of tight ends in round 2. Then you get T.Y. Hilton in the third round. I mean, they really, really did well by themselves with that draft right there. You're talking about arguably their 3 top weapons now in the passing game and their franchise quarterback, their potentially someday Super Bowl winning quarterback. You talk about other good picks like a mid-round pick like Hugh Thornton from 2013. Look at last year's second-round pick, Jack Mewhort. Once he got into the flow at guard, he played really, really well. So they've had some successes, yes, mostly on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to the draft, but it's reflected in the team's performance on the field. And at the end of the day, you've drafted that franchise quarterback. That is the side of the ball that should be better. And that is the side of the ball that you have to emphasize more. Some people might not agree with that, but they're wrong. You get that franchise quarterback and then you build around him. So you want to ensure that franchise quarterback is successful. And at least, if nothing else, the Indianapolis Colts have done that. Now, unfortunately for them, you look at like a 2013 first-round pick in Bjorn Warner. He really hasn't been much. He's been exactly pretty much what I thought he would be coming out of Florida State, and that was a questionable fit as an edge rusher in a 3-4 defense. We'll see what they get out of Dante Moncrief, their third-round pick in 2014, a guy that flashed some late in the season, but now he's going to be in a situation where he's probably going to get a lot more playing time, and we'll see what ultimately happens. Now, the Indianapolis Colts think they're close. And you could tell that based off of what they did this offseason. When you draft well on one side of the ball, it allows you some flexibility in free agency in terms of being able to address some of your holes and get yourself some short-term stopgap type of guys. Bring in some veterans to be around your young core nucleus. You look at them bringing in Andre Johnson and Frank Gore. Now you bring in an Andre Johnson, even an aging Andre Johnson. You team him with T.Y. Hilton and Dante Moncrief and Kobe Fleener and Dwayne Allen. That's a very, very nice set of weapons for an Andrew Luck to work with on the outside. Then you bring in a Frank Gore to be that guy in the running game, that physical between the tackle runner that Trent Richardson ultimately never ended up being. You bring in guys for your defense like Nate Irving and Kendall Langford and Trent Cole, all guys that could play a role, all guys that could potentially start in that defense in 2015, and all guys that you didn't have to back up the Brinks truck in order to get. These are the type of guys sometimes that make good short-term sense for an Indianapolis Colts team that needs a little bit more, frankly, to be able to get over the hump and doesn't have enough draft pick currency to be able to just solely draft their way over that hump. So it was a good offseason for the Indianapolis Colts. They didn't really lose too much in the way of key pieces, and they brought in some guys that could be really helpful to them in that locker room heading into 2015. But they still have some needs in the NFL draft. And I think, not surprisingly to anyone, most of their needs are on the defensive side of the ball. Most, but not all. At the end of the day, will the New England Patriots be the standard bearers and the team to beat in 2015? Maybe, maybe not. But the Indianapolis Colts must prepare themselves as if that is going to be the ultimate hurdle and obstacle they must overcome next season. Because God knows the last few times that Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts have played Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, it has not ended well for one of those teams, and every time it's the New England Patriots. They're not even close. They get boat raced. They get out hustled. They get out muscled. They get out physical. They get outed so many different things. And one of the biggest problems for the Colts on defense is their weakness up the middle of the defense. At safety, at inside linebacker, on their defensive line. This is a team that needs to get bigger, a team that needs to get more physical, a team that needs to get tougher, a team that needs to get more athletic up the middle, especially in the back half of that defense. And that would be an area that I expect the Colts will address early and often in the 2015 NFL Draft. Inside linebacker, safety, defensive line. These are all big needs. And, they have to fix those needs. They have to address those needs. And while they might have looked at some of those needs in free agency, there are still needs there. In terms of offense, I think they could use a big-time upgrade at center. If you want to roll with Jonathan Harrison another year, more power to you. But I would try to find an upgrade at some point. I think they could use more depth at wide receiver. Andre Johnson, is he going to be a 1 or 2 year guy for you? Is Dante Moncrief really going to pan out? We'll see. But they could always use more depth there. And I think they could use another type of running back. Yes, you brought in Frank Gore, and you're maybe hoping that a guy like Ahmad Bradshaw will come in and play a certain role in 2015, or a guy like Boom Herron will be that complement. But what would be wrong with looking at a deep and loaded running back class and trying to address that position at some point in time in the middle rounds? Maybe try to get yourself some type of speed, change of pace, scat type of back. When I look at the Indianapolis Colts, you look at their philosophy for this draft. I'm not sure that they're going to be in a position where they really want to trade up. They could maybe benefit from moving back out of pick 29 in round 1 and maybe picking up an additional day 3 pick for doing so. That could work. I'd expect them at this point in time, though, to probably stand put at number 29. Some options for them at number 29 would either be Stephon Anthony or Eric Kendricks. Either one of those inside linebackers I think would make a world of sense. Some might say somebody like a defensive lineman like Eddie Goldman from Florida State. Again, I think he would make a lot of sense. Many would point to somebody like a Landon Collins from Alabama at in-the-box safety that they really desperately need badly. If he's there at 29, he makes a world of sense for the Colts, and I most have to certainly agree with that. Some might even suggest a center like a Cameron Irving out of Florida State if he's there. And again, he makes a lot of sense. In terms of their philosophy, a good thing for them is where they're potentially drafting in the first round at number 29, most of their top needs, there's going to be a really good player available at those different positions. So the Colts can just sit there and say, best player available at one of these positions, and then we go from there. Then the rest of the draft, maybe they focus a little bit more on the specific needs like inside linebacker, safety, defensive line depth, what have you. Does that mean that they should stay away from a running back at 29 if a Melvin Gordon somehow happened to be there? No, it's not saying that at all. Because they could just go totally best player available. I don't think they need to restrict themselves to any one certain position or one side of the ball at number 29. Just take the best player available that makes sense, that fits what you do at a certain specific position of need, and then the rest of the draft, I think primarily the philosophy does need to be on addressing that defensive side of the ball, getting more size up the middle and getting more physicality and toughness up the middle.